All right, guys, the first game of the divisional round just wrapped up a few minutes ago. Over to my right here, the Ravens beat their brains in. It took them a half, right? It took them a half to get going, but when they got going, there was not much stopping them. It was a blowout by the fourth quarter, and honestly, by the end of the third quarter, it kind of felt like we already knew where this was gonna go. So, Baltimore whoops them, and this is interesting to us for reasons that we haven't had reason to be interested in until this season. We haven't been able to really do head coaching candidate searches for such a long time because we had a head coach for a very, very long period of time. This is the first offseason in almost a decade and a half where we've been able to actually sit there and go, we got to watch these playoff games because we need to see who our next coach could be. We need to see what candidates we like. We need to see what these guys are doing. So we're watching these games for entertainment. We're watching these games for players. Maybe we have certain rooting interests. I'll get to that in a second here. But we're also watching thinking, should any of these guys be the next Seattle Seahawks head coach? And this game had a heavy, heavy amount of interest in that regard because you had Mike Macdonald for the Ravens, you had Bobby Slowik for the Texans, and maybe, just maybe, you've also got Todd Monken in Baltimore. So, how you feeling after that one? Because number one, if you're a Mike Macdonald guy, and I know a lot of you guys are Mike Macdonald guys, you're feeling great right now, right? Because that Houston offense scored 3 points. And it was all the kind of stuff that we're used to seeing from that Baltimore defense. Throwing all these different exotic looks out there, doing all these creative things, doing so much without having the super duper blue chippers. They have blue chippers, but they don't have Myles Garrett. They don't have TJ Watt. They don't have Micah Parsons. They have good players. And they are getting a lot out of some guys who aren't even considered that good. Jadeveon Clowney has been an NFL nomad for years now, and they've turned him into a prolific edge rusher, basically their top sack getter, I think. I think he leads that team in sacks. If not, he's up there, right? He's a borderline double digit guy. So, I mean, Mike Macdonald fans out there, I know there are plenty of you. You're feeling great right now. That was a 3 point effort from that Texans offense. And we know that Texans offense is pretty good. I'm not going to say it's great or anything because it's not, but it's a pretty good offense. And they had no answers, just like we had no answers, just like Detroit had no answers against this Ravens defense. Slowik, on the other hand, his stock has got to go down right now. That was a really bad no-show. They had, what, barely, did they even get to 250 yards of offense? I think they barely broke 200 in this game. 3 points, 200 yards. Their punt return unit was more productive than their offense, honestly. Straight up. And it's understandable. The Houston Texans have eaten some serious injuries at the receiver position. They're working with not their full crew. But yeah, the stock just has to go down a little bit. And, I got to ask again. I know I already talked about this when I made my Bobby Slowik video. But we're talking about a guy who was a Kyle Shanahan understudy, which is great. But it also makes you wonder, what is he doing to make a difference here? What is he actually bringing to the table as a member of that coaching staff that they couldn't get from anybody? So you've got several years under Kyle Shanahan where the offense is great because, of course, it's great because it's Kyle Shanahan. And he goes to Houston, and I made a video about Slowik, and one thing I said in that video was that Geno Smith right now is a better quarterback than CJ Stroud, and I got some people who were like, "Are you kidding me? There's no way. CJ Stroud is an elite quarterback already. He's way better than." Okay, let's say that's true, which it's not. Geno Smith is better than CJ Stroud, but let's pretend for a second that CJ Stroud's better. So, if CJ Stroud is so much better than Geno Smith, if he's some kind of great elite quarterback, somebody that is miles better than Geno, the way some of you portray him to be, then why do I want the offensive coordinator who had that elite quarterback, had a much better offensive line than Geno had in Seattle, had decent receivers for most of the year, pretty good receivers for most of the year, until the end when like Tank Dell got hurt, and then we started to see guys like Noah Brown go down, and then they were thin at receiver, admittedly, but they had decent receivers most of the year. They had Dalton Schultz at tight end. They ran the ball slightly worse than Seattle did on in totality over the year, maybe. Like he had all that, and he produced an offense that was slightly above average in points per game and EPA per play. Slightly above average. They didn't really score that much more than the Seahawks. They weren't more efficient than the Seahawks. Like, if you actually think CJ Stroud is an elite quarterback, which he's not yet, but if you think that, then somebody explain to me why I want the offensive coordinator who, in his 1 year of coordinator experience, produced an offense that was slightly above average with all that stuff he had to work with. So I don't know about that one, guys. I'm pretty cold on that one. The more I think about it, like straight up, just give me Shane Waldron at that point. Like Shane Waldron has 3 years of coordinator experience. He's done more with less. He actually has 1 year where his offense was good, which Slowik does not have. Not really, anyway. And yeah, he's at that point. What's the difference? I do not understand the Bobby Slowik hype and that game. Obviously, I'm not going to kill him for getting killed by the Ravens defense in particular because it's a great defense. And Mike Macdonald just, has him coming and going. That's just the way it goes sometimes. But ultimately, even outside of that, Texans weren't top 10 in scoring. They weren't top 10 in EPA. I don't think they were top 10 in DVOA. Maybe they were, but I don't think they were. And even if they are, I just need a little bit more. So the third part to this, and the part that I think is going to be really interesting, and I'm going to talk about this guy a lot in a couple days here because this one's very interesting. What do you guys think of Todd Monken now, the Ravens offensive coordinator? That would be a very interesting curveball to throw into the mix here. This is a guy who's older. He's got a lot of experience. The work he's done over the last 3 years in particular has been A+++. What about Todd Monken as a sleeper head coach candidate? He's gotten the best football possible out of Lamar Jackson. He's gotten the best possible football out of that Georgia crew and Stetson Bennett and Brock Bowers and all those guys down in Georgia. And he's currently just on top of the world right now. He won back-to-back national championships as an offensive coordinator, and it looks like he might be on the verge of winning a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator as well. So we got something here. We got something interesting here, and to me, Todd Monken needs to be discussed in some capacity as a head coaching candidate. I know that there probably aren't enough openings for him to sneak in. Maybe he needs 1 more year, but the 1 year he's had has been remarkable because this Ravens offense was not nearly this good the last several years. Not even close. All right, we got another game to watch later today. Now, one element to this Houston Texans loss that's worth noting that I've talked about a little bit before is on the draft. Houston's pick that they're sending to Arizona currently sits at 27, which is where it will stay unless Green Bay or Tampa Bay wins. If Green Bay or Tampa Bay wins, that pick bumps up 1 spot. If they both win, that pick bumps up 2 spots. Now, I still want Green Bay to win for obvious reasons, but Detroit, just provide a little bit of a barrier tomorrow, please. Thank you. All right, see y'all later. Go Hawks. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think about all this.